it's true. People have been saying that the upfront is going to go away, or why do we still do the upfront, for as long as I've been in the industry, for sure. And I think it is still incredibly relevant. And it's relevant for three reasons. One reason is because there is still scarcity, which was a huge driver of the upfront at its inception as well, around high attention, high quality content, particularly that which drives concurrent viewing at scale, like live sports. As long as that's still considered scarce by a lot of marketers, there will still be an upfront. Another reason that it's still relevant is because TV and streaming, which is what really transacts in the upfront, works. It performs for advertisers. So again, there's something that works for them and that is scarce. That's going to make a market. And then I think the third reason, which doesn't get really headlines and is probably less sexy but is still true, is that it is operationally efficient. Now, we've come a really long way with much more automation, much more transacting programmatically. But, I don't think there's really any company or very few companies that are close to ready on both the buy side and the sell side to do everything on a just-in-time basis. So those three things keep it relevant. Now, a lot has changed. I think that one thing that's different is that it used to be inventory first. Everybody would come to the table and do a big TV commitment and then fill in around that. So it was kind of, what content am I going to be and what price will I get? And now I think it's a lot more about audience first. Who's the audience I want to reach? And then what is the most efficient and effective way for me to reach them in content that also meets my needs as a marketer? So that might drive a marketer to a similar place or similar commitments or partnerships as it has in the past, or a different place, but they're starting from that different lens. The other thing I think that's changed is that it used to be really driven by, content or inventory and price, and now it's also critical, and people are really deep in discussions around execution path, around data, and around flexibility as well.
So that idea of scarcity, particularly as live sports have combined to tie together linear aspects with streaming, what's your sense for how the upfront is likely to evolve in the future?
I mean, I think as long as those three conditions remain, it's operationally efficient, you got something that works, and you have something that is considered scarce. Rights may fragment, players may change, who the sort of most important conversations are with will evolve, but it's still going to go on. And even as that operational efficiency one goes away, the other two things will continue to make this a competitive marketplace. And whether it looks exactly like this, who knows? But I kind of hope it does. Parties are fun.
We've always lived in uncertain times, right? But now it seems a little bit more obviously uncertain. So with that economic uncertainty in mind, how has that been kind of hanging over the upfront negotiations this year?
So I'm not directly involved in upfront negotiations this year, but I've talked to folks on both sides. And I think that right now, there is a lot of understandable uncertainty, hesitation. There are, legitimate recessionary fears that are out there for a lot of companies. There are tariff-related complexity to their business that they hadn't planned for. And so I think that there is going to be a lot of companies that are being cautious, potentially holding back, or to the extent they're spending, I think that they are going to feel pressure to spend, particularly from CFOs, in areas that really they can directly and clearly measure the return on ad spend. And so I think that makes sense. So I can imagine platforms like an Amazon or retail media networks would be places that would kind of feel like a natural fit. And that makes lots of sense because there's very valuable audiences and solutions there. But I think that, some advice that I am giving to folks I talk to is that while it's really important to try and maximize ROAS, we can never forget that the highest best purpose of advertising is to build your brand. And so I think it's just really important to be cautious to not accidentally overemphasize or overinvest things that just happen to be closer to the point of transaction or the bottom of the funnel. Like to take a really simple small business example, if you're a pizza store owner and you run a promotion to give buy one, get one free with a slice, and you hand out coupons in front of your store and lots of people come in, does that mean your promotion was a success? Or does that mean that actually you just gave a bunch of people that were coming in anyway a free slice of pizza, right? Just because, you see something that you can measure doesn't always mean it's necessarily working for you and your objective. And so it's just to be cautious. I think that's one piece of advice I would give. The other piece of advice that I have been sharing with folks that I've been talking with is the same way we pay so much attention and are really focused on the nature of the content and the nature of the audience and who it is we're trying to reach, we should also be really interrogating the nature of the data signal we're using to do that targeting and that measurement. There is a broad spectrum of data quality out there, and I think it's really important that anyone spending money has a really good sense of the reliability of the signal they're using at the time of planning, but also over the life of a campaign, because it can degrade depending on the source. And so I think that that's just another thing that the smart money's focused on.
Want to get back to that idea of scarcity in 2025, especially as we are continuing to see this shift from linear, where scarcity is defined very clearly, to streaming, where it feels in a lot of ways that you can just binge forever, but there is still scarcity of quality engaging content. Is that what you're talking about when you look at the idea of scarcity and the appeal of scarcity to advertisers and sellers in an upfront in 2025?
I think what's scarce, live viewing is live concurrent scaled viewing, whether that is a award show or a big sporting event, I think is scarce, whether it's happening in a traditional environment or in a streaming environment. In both cases, tremendous value, culture building, brand building moment. And certainly within those big audiences, you can do a lot of sophisticated targeting. So I think it depends what you consider scarce, depends on what it is you're trying to do. But that certainly is one area where I think everybody's focused. And it's not about the platform, it's about what that inventory is and what it can do for your brand.
Well, speaking of buyers, the idea of buyers coming into the upfronts has maybe changed a little bit. I would never think that the upfronts would be a place where you'd ask a question, where I'd ask a question about the role of SMBs in this kind of marketplace, but they seem to be having a place. They seem to be finding their place in the upfronts. What's driving that?
So I think that there's a lot of buzz happening right now around media companies making investments and making moves so that they can start to capture more of the SMB, small business space. It's a space that's long been dominated by the platforms. And it makes a lot of sense why this is a priority. If you think about it, as we move in advertising writ large from, broad-based audiences to more precise targeting, as we move to more dynamic ad insertion, the only way to maintain pricing leverage is to have greater demand density and diversity. It's also the only way that those companies will also be able to fill all of their inventory in the future. So it makes a lot of sense. Now, for that to really work, I think it's going to take three things that are just very fundamental but critical to creating a winning solution for small businesses. The first thing is that it's got to be easy for them. It needs to be simple, intuitive as an interface, and ideally integrated into places that those small businesses are already advertising their business and running their business. So think platforms like Shopify or Grubhub, places where those business owners already are, and so it's in their flow. Another thing, and it's got to be easy to use, those tools, it cannot be complicated at all. It needs to be very intuitive. The second thing is it's got to work. The last organization that I was with, we worked with many small businesses, and there's something that gets very real very fast when the client is not only the person doing the buy, but the person running the business. Either it works or it doesn't. And so it's very important that the solution perform and that performance be able to be demonstrated back to that business owner in a way that they understand, in a way that they can feel confident about. And performance gets a little more complex with any business that has sort of a geographic or a local filter to it, because that means you got to have enough scale that you're going to be able to actually drive something within that area, whatever it might be. So those are two very important things. And then the third thing, and this is interesting because maybe it's actually the first thing, is that the best media, the best targeting, the most scale cannot make up for either bad creative or no creative. And a big barrier for small businesses coming into television for years has been maybe they don't have great creative or maybe they don't have any TV creative at all. And so I think AI is probably going to play a really big role in unlocking this as it can be leveraged to create low cost, low friction, easy to use tools so that these businesses can now be armed with the strong creative that they need to perform. And also for the media companies, they will have creative that they can feel good about in terms of the viewing experience they're delivering and the experience their other larger advertisers will be alongside of. So I think that, that's sort of where I see the space going, but it's exciting to watch what's happening and the innovation that is going on all over.